I knew Thanksgiving would be uncomfortable, but I didn't think my dad would look me straight in the eyes in front of everyone and say, "Kaylee's, if you can't get your life together, maybe you should go live in the streets." He didn't whisper it. He didn't say it nicely. He didn't even blink. My sister, Isolde, hid a smirk behind her wine glass. My mom, Seraphine, fixed the napkins like she could fold away the shame. Everyone waited for me to cry, to look small, to break down. But I didn't. I smiled. Because none of them knew the truth. They didn't know I built 2 companies from scratch. They didn't know I made $25 million last year. They didn't know I had stopped needing anything from them a long time ago. I stood up. I smoothed my coat. And I walked out quietly. 3 weeks later they walked into my world. If someone had taken a picture of my family on Thanksgiving, it would have looked perfect. A shiny dining table. Golden candles. Pretty fall decorations draped around the room. 5 people smiling as if life had never touched them harshly. But pictures can lie. My family lived inside a lie for so long that they forgot it wasn't real. But before I continue, hit the subscribe button and tell me where you watching this from, and what time of day is it. My name is Kaylee's Vera. I am 31 years old. I started 2 automation companies. I own 3 properties. I built everything from nothing, just from my hard work, my ideas, and my late-night dreams. But to my parents, I was still the girl who never did enough. The girl they whispered about, not in sentences but in little remarks and sighs. My father, Alaric, ruled the house with rules carved in stone. My mother, Seraphine, upheld those rules with perfect grace. Together they made a world where everything had to look perfect, even if it meant breaking me inside. My younger sister, Isolde, was their favorite. Perfect posture. Perfect smile. Perfect everything. If she tripped, it was the floor's fault. If I tripped, it was my fault. I lost count of the times I overheard my mother telling guests, "Isolde is destined for something special. She's independent. She explores." Like my whole life and career were just some kind of vacation, some exploring she could comment on while ignoring what I had built. I stopped needing their praise long ago. But no matter how old a child grows, we never forget the shape of the wounds our parents leave. And I remembered mine clearly. I grew up preferring the garage to the living room. I would take apart radios, computers, and even appliances if no one stopped me. At 12 years old, I built a functional home automation system using old parts one found. My dad unplugged it and said, "That's cute. Now do something real." I learned early that I wasn't what they wanted. But I hadn't realized until that Thanksgiving night that I wasn't anything to them at all. I sat at the far end of the table that night, barely under the warm light of the chandelier. I watched the conversations spin around Isolde like planets orbiting the sun. "Your boutique looks stunning, sweetheart. The expansion will be wonderful. You've always had such talent." Meanwhile, my mother only glanced at me to pass the cranberry sauce. Then my father cleared his throat, leaned back in his chair and looked straight at me. His gaze was heavy, like he had been waiting for this moment. "So Kaylee's," he said, voice sharp, cutting through the chatter. "Still trying to figure out what you're doing with your life?" The room fell silent. Isolde sipped her wine. My mother adjusted her napkin as if that could fix the discomfort. Before I could speak, my father continued. "Honestly, if you can't get your life together, maybe you should go live in the streets." He didn't blink. He didn't hesitate. He didn't care. But for the first time I didn't feel hurt. I felt clarity. Pure sharp clarity. They had never seen me. They never intended to. I stood, smoothed my coat and said quietly, "Thank you for dinner." Then I walked out of that perfect staged home and into the cold November air. I didn't realize yet, but walking away that night was when everything began to change. 3 days after Thanksgiving, the silence in my penthouse felt heavier than usual. I lived in a high-rise in Austin with huge windows that showed the skyline. Bright and alive. While I walked through my home, it felt like I was drifting between 2 worlds. In one world, I was a CEO preparing for a product launch. In the other, I was the daughter my family pretended didn't exist. I was making tea when my phone buzzed. It was my cousin Amaris. Amaris was the only one in the family who had ever quietly defended me. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But in ways that really mattered. She sent a message, "Kaylee's, are you okay?" I wiped my hands and typed, "Me? I'm fine." "Why, Amaris?" She replied, "Because your mom has been talking." My stomach tightened, not with fear but with a tired kind of anticipation. Talking in my family always meant rewriting the truth. I asked, what did she say now? A long pause. Then Amaris wrote, she told everyone at church that your businesses failed. That you're basically homeless. That you're sleeping on friends' couches until you figure yourself out. I froze. Homeless. Failed. Couch hopping. They didn't just insult me. They built a story. A story so vivid they could almost believe it themselves. I walked toward my window, staring at the penthouse I had built with my own money. The shelves I designed. The marble counters I imported. The panoramic view of the city. Homeless. I laughed quietly, bitterly. Me. I own 3 properties. Amaris replied, I know. But they don't want to know. That hurt in a way I hadn't expected. They don't want to know. Not that they don't know. They don't want to know. Because knowing would force them to face the truth. The truth that I had outperformed every expectation. The truth that Isolde wasn't the golden child. They had chosen me as their scapegoat. That their perfect little myth wasn't real. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. What else did they say? I asked. Amaris hesitated. Finally, your dad said he's worried you might cling to them financially. Your mom said they've done enough for you and you need to grow up. Grow up. The same parents who painted me as a failure now painted themselves as victims. My chest tightened, not from hurt but from insult. Then Amaris added one more thing. Also, Isolde's boutique is struggling. Your parents are exploring funding options. I think they're planning something. Funding options. I knew exactly what that meant. In my family, funding options always meant find someone to blame. Find someone to use. Someone whose name could take the fall. And who did they always reach for? Me. The daughter they belittled. The daughter they discredited. The daughter they depended on privately while publicly ignoring. I walked into my office and sat at my desk. My fingers tapped slowly on the wood. They threw me out and immediately made me a tragedy. They humiliated me and immediately made me a burden. They rejected me and immediately tried to use me. But this time something inside me hardened. A decision was formed. Not loud. Not dramatic. But cold and sharp, like a blade forged quietly in fire. They wanted a story where I was the failure. They wanted a myth where they were the heroes. They wanted me small. But myths collapse. Lies unravel. 3 days after Thanksgiving, my parents rewrote my story. 3 weeks later, I would rewrite theirs. The Monday after Thanksgiving began like any other. Meetings stacked on my calendar. Product updates to review. Investor calls waiting. My world was moving fast. Structured. Alive. Nothing like the slow, suffocating version of me my parents imagined. Around noon, I checked my inbox. A new email blinked at the top. Subject: verification required. Guarantor authorization urgent from Sinclair and Weber Law Group. Guarantor for what? I clicked. The first line made the air leave my lungs. This notice is to confirm your status as guarantor for the $480,000 renovation loan approved in 2021. I kept reading. Attached was the signed agreement, including my signature. My signature. A cold whisper ran down my spine. I downloaded the file. Opened the scan. Zoomed in. There it was. Kaylee's Vera. The letters tried to copy my handwriting, but they were wrong. The Y curved wrong. The M sloped wrong. Someone had studied my signature. But they didn't understand it. They only needed it to look believable. My hands went numb. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't miscommunication. It wasn't an accident. It was a forgery. Someone close. Someone who had access to documents with my signature. Someone who assumed I wouldn't fight back. I stared at the screen. My parents wouldn't, would they? Yes. Yes, they would. They would use my name if it helped Isolde. I scrolled again. Use of funds. Boutique expansion. Isolde Vera. The boutique they said Isolde built with her own talent was actually built using my name, my signature, and my credit. Without asking me. Without telling me. Now the loan risked default. Meaning I could be legally blamed. Meaning my assets could be taken. They had dragged me into a financial disaster. They had shielded Isolde entirely. I closed my laptop before I threw it. I took a deep breath. Slow. Controlled. This wasn't new. It was just the first time I had proof. I dialed the number at the bottom of the email. A woman answered politely. I introduced myself. She confirmed the documents. She confirmed the signature on file. She confirmed the outstanding balance. She confirmed the risk of default. Her voice softened. Do you believe your signature was used without consent? She asked. Yes, I said. She exhaled. It happens more often than you'd think, she said. We'll send you everything to dispute it legally. But you should speak to your attorney immediately. I called Tavian Reese, my lawyer. The one who handled my acquisitions and intellectual property. He picked up on the second ring. Tavian, Kaylee's. You don't sound like yourself, he said. Someone forged my signature on a $480,000 loan, I said. Pause. Tavian, send me everything now, I said. Within 10 minutes we were on a video call. Documents spread across both our screens. Tavian's brows knit deeper as he clicked each file. This wasn't sloppy, he said. I know who did it, I said. Then you know this won't be easy, he said. I'm not looking for easy, I said. He studied me long enough to see the resolve settling in my eyes. Are you ready to escalate this fully, including criminal implications? He asked. Yes. They've been rewriting my life for years. They tried to write it in my name. I am ready. He nodded calm. Then we start tonight. While my parents were probably telling someone I was lost or struggling, I was gathering evidence. Screenshots, dates, handwriting differences, financial trails. Every truth they buried was clawing its way up to the surface. They thought they could use me again. They thought I was still desperate for approval. They had no idea who I had become. And they had no idea I wasn't walking away quietly this time. Over the next 2 days, Tavian and I unraveled the truth. Thread by thread. Each discovery tightened something inside me. Not grief. Not a shock. But a quiet, rising determination. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that sharpens like a knife. By Wednesday morning, Tavian called again. I picked up the phone immediately. Tavian, Kaylee's, I've gone through everything, he said in a calm, serious voice. You need to listen carefully. What your parents did wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It was planned. Every single part of it. I stayed quiet. I already knew. I had suspected it before, but hearing him say it made it real. The bank believed you had signed the loan yourself, he continued. They were shown an ID. Someone practiced your signature. Someone practiced how you acted. This wasn't careless. It wasn't sloppy. They planned it. I closed my eyes. I let the truth sink in slowly. It didn't hit me like a hurtful blow. It didn't make me feel weak. Instead, it felt like armor wrapping around me. Strong. Proactive. I could breathe without fear. What happens now? I asked quietly. There was a long silence. I could almost hear Tavian thinking carefully about every word. Tavian, he said finally, if the loan keeps going badly, the bank will look for someone with money and stability to take over. If you take it over carefully, you could end up controlling the property connected to it. You mean me controlling the boutique? I asked, my heart skipping. Yes, exactly, he said. You can take what they tried to do to hurt you and turn it into your chance to be in charge. You can turn their lies into your leverage. I leaned back in my chair, looking out the window at the Austin skyline. The city lights glimmered like tiny stars, and I felt something settle inside me. My parents had wanted me to feel small. They had wanted me to be weak and dependent. They thought I still needed them. But they were wrong. What do you need from me, Tavian? I asked. Your choice, he said simply. I felt a chill run down my spine. I'll do it, I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It was calm, cold, and sure. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defending myself. I wasn't reacting to their moves. I was ready to act. We started immediately. Tavian began drafting letters to challenge the forged signature, asking the bank for papers proving who had signed the loan. He also wrote a preliminary alert to the bank, warning them about possible fraud. At the same time, quietly and carefully, we started the work of positioning me to take over the loan if it failed. While my parents lived in denial, thinking everything was fine, we worked with precision. We examined numbers, ownership papers, future sales options, rental terms, exit plans, and every possible scenario to make sure I would be protected. Each fake document they had created, each lie they had told, became another piece of evidence strengthening my position. I felt calm. Almost eerily calm. Pain reacts. Clarity plans. I was done reacting. I was done letting their actions control me. That night, I was looking at a spreadsheet showing how much money Isolde's boutique had lost. I whispered quietly to myself, "You should have left me out of your mess." It was the truth. I hadn't asked for this. I hadn't wanted revenge. I hadn't wanted anything from them. No money, no attention, no recognition. All I had ever wanted was distance, space, freedom. But they had built a bridge made of lies and expected me to carry it across. Not this time. Around 11 p.m. my phone buzzed again. "Tavian," I said. "One more thing," he said. "The bank is worried. They've already flagged the loan as unstable. It's failing faster than expected. You could get control sooner than we planned." "Me? Good," I said, feeling a strange mix of nerves and relief. "The sooner this happens, the better." He exhaled. Maybe it was a relief. Maybe disbelief. "Most people would be overwhelmed," he said. "You sound steady." "Me? Because I've lived through worse," I said quietly. "They just hit me harder than usual. But I've been through worse." He didn't argue. And after we hung up, I didn't pace. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. Instead, I walked to my balcony and let the cold December air wash over my skin. Below me, the city pulsed with cars, lights, and possibility. Far away, in the place that once felt like home, my parents were probably asleep. Believing they were still in control. Believing Isolde would be saved. Believing the consequences of their actions would never catch up with them. They had no idea that the ground beneath them was already shifting. For years, they had insisted I was the unstable one, the failure, the disappointment. But I had become the one thing they never prepared for. Independent, informed, and in control. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, on a cold Friday morning, Tavian's name lit up on my phone. I had been expecting the call, but even knowing it was coming, the moment felt heavier than I thought it would. I answered immediately. "Tavian Kaylees, it's official," he said. His voice was heavy, filled with the weight of reality. "The loan has defaulted. You now legally control the debt and everything attached to it. Everything. The boutique property. Its lease. Its assets. Its future." I sat down slowly, letting the truth wash over me. Not with triumph, not with anger. But like oxygen filling my lungs after being underwater too long. "Move forward with the acquisition," I told Tavian. "No hesitation," he said. "Me? None," I said, feeling the determination settle like ice in my chest. We spent the next 4 days preparing every document we needed. The formal notice of default. The papers to assume the debt. Proposed repayment terms. Exit options. A structured rental agreement. Contingency plans for a sale. Asset transfer clauses. Nothing was mean. Nothing was emotional. Everything was legal, clean, and procedural. This wasn't about revenge. This was about boundaries. Boundaries my parents had crossed so many times they had forgotten they existed. On Tuesday night, we finalized all the paperwork. On Wednesday morning, Tavian filed everything. And by Thursday afternoon, the bank confirmed the transfer. I was the sole party in control. The daughter they had humiliated. The daughter they had called embarrassing. The daughter they insisted was lost, now held their financial future in her hands. That evening around 6:30 p.m. my phone buzzed again. This time it was a name I didn't expect. "Cale, Isolde's boyfriend." "Cale," I said, curious and cautious. "Kaylees, I think your parents are in trouble," he said, his voice tight. "They got a notice from the bank this morning. They're panicking." I smiled faintly, though it wasn't joy. It wasn't satisfying. It wasn't gloating. It was the quiet feeling of inevitability. "What did they think the notice meant?" I asked. "They think the bank wants to talk before taking action," he said. "They think they still have time. They don't know it's you." Of course they didn't know. They had always lived in a world where consequences belonged to other people. "How bad is it, Cale?" I asked. "My mom is crying. My dad is quiet. Isolde hasn't spoken all day," he said. "Good. Tell them to meet me at Willow Ridge Restaurant Friday at 7 p.m. Tell them they think the lender will be there," I said calmly. "Let them believe that." Cale swallowed audibly. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes," I said. 3 weeks ago my father looked me in the eyes and told me to go live in the streets. 3 days later they told people I was homeless. 2 years ago they forged my signature. I'm done feeling small. Done being rewritten. Done being useful only when they needed a shield. I'm not trying to destroy them. I just won't let them destroy me. When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the darkened window. My eyes didn't look angry. Not vengeful. Not mean. Just steady. For the first time, everything was aligned. My truth. My power. My boundaries. My voice. Friday would not be revenge. It would be clarity. They had spent years painting me as weak, helpless, and unstable. But the truth was coming. This time they would have to see me whether they wanted to or not. Willow Ridge was quieter than usual that Friday evening. A dim, elegant restaurant tucked behind a row of oak trees. A place where secrets could be spoken safely. Tavian arrived before I did, seated at the private table we had reserved for 6. The candlelight flickered across polished glasses, reflecting calm where I felt careful calculation. By 7:04 p.m. the door opened. My mother walked in first. Perfect hair. Perfect lipstick. Perfectly tight expression. My father followed behind her, shoulders stiff, eyes darting like he already sensed something was wrong. And Isolde lingered at the doorway, eyes glossy, bracing herself for the truth. No one said hello. No one acknowledged me. The only sound was the clink of chairs on the floor. My mother cleared her throat. Mother Kaylees, we appreciate you arranging this meeting with the lender. We believe this is a misunderstanding. Actually, a bit of. I folded my hands neatly in front of me. Is that so? I said. My father leaned forward. Father, we're ready to discuss solutions. The lender just needs to be reasonable. Tavian and I exchanged a glance. They still believed the world revolved around their comfort. Tavian placed a thick folder on the table. Mr. and Mrs. Vera, I am not the lender's attorney. But Miss Vera Kaylees is now the acquiring party. She controls the debt and every asset tied to it. Silence. Total breathless silence. Isolde's breath hitched. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father turned pale. You bought our loan? My father's voice cracked. Why would you do that? He asked again. I met his gaze without blinking. Biz, you put my name on it. Forging my signature is not helping. Telling people I'm homeless is not a concern. Humiliating me at Thanksgiving is not parenting. Isolde slammed her palm on the table. Why couldn't you just let it go? You have money. You don't need this. I turned to her slowly. You're right. I don't need this. But I need my name. And you used it without permission. Tavian slid another document forward. You have 2 options. 1. Sell the property and fully resolve the debt. 2. Miss Vera assumes ownership, and you may remain as tenants under a structured rental contract. My father stared at the papers, horrified. We have to rent our own building? It isn't your building, I said simply. Not anymore. My mother's composure splintered. Tears filled her eyes. Not remorseful tears. Fearful ones. We are your family. How can you do this to us? I leaned forward, voice steady as steel. You taught me exactly how. The night you told me to go live in the streets. The years you pretended I was nothing. And the moment you forged my name thinking I would never fight back. My father swallowed hard. His hands trembled. What do you want from us? Nothing, I said. Not forgiveness. No apologies. Just accountability. Isolde looked at the documents again, wide-eyed. You're ruining everything. No, I said, shaking my head slowly. I'm ending what you started. Tavian closed the folder with a soft thud. You have 7 days to decide. We recommend you start immediately. No one moved. No one argued. The illusion of power they had clung to for years had collapsed in a single evening. When they finally stood to leave, they looked smaller. Fragile. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My father shuffled away, weighed down by every choice he had made. Isolde paused at the doorway. You could have helped me, she said softly. I did, I said. Just not the way you wanted. As the door closed behind them, I realized something. This wasn't revenge. This was closure. This was the moment I finally stepped out of the shadow of a family that never saw me and into the life I built for myself. I had my truth. My power. My voice. My boundaries. And this time I was the one standing steady and unbroken, while the past faded behind me. The 7 days after that were much quieter than I thought they would be. No angry phone calls, no desperate messages, no one trying to change the story, just quiet. Really, really quiet. It felt strange at first. After all the chaos, the yelling, and the endless arguments, suddenly there was silence. A heavy, echoing silence that made me notice things I hadn't before. Tavian sent me updates every morning. They were short, simple, and serious. He didn't try to sugarcoat anything, didn't add feelings, didn't add drama. Just the facts. On day 2, the Monroe's family asked for more papers. On day 4, they spoke to a money helper. On day 5, they tried to talk to the bank to change the rules, but the bank said no. On day 6, they asked if they could have more time. They didn't get any. Each morning I read the updates and felt the tension slowly shrinking. Then on the 7th day at 9:12 in the morning I got a message. They decided to sell the building. I stared at the email for a long time, letting the words sink in. This was really over. The building they loved so much, the one they had poured time, money, and energy into, was gone. The little store they were proud of, called Isolde's, was gone. The perfect life they always showed everyone, the one that looked so shiny and happy on the outside, was broken. The problems they avoided for years finally caught up to them. Tavian called me a few minutes later. They did the right thing, he said. Selling the building pays off all the money they owe. Your name is no longer connected to anything. You are free. I said calmly, good. There was no happiness in my voice, no celebration. Just calmness. Just a sense of peace. Tavian asked gently, Kaylee's, are you okay? I breathed out slowly, feeling the cold winter air on my face through the window. I'm exactly where I need to be, I said. He didn't ask more. He didn't need to. 2 weeks later, Isolde's store closed for good. The announcement came online with a soft, pretty picture in gentle colors and fancy letters. It said, sometimes chapters close to make room for new beginnings. It looked like a sweet little ending. There was no mention of the loan they owed, no mention of the fake signature, and no hint that they did anything wrong. Just a perfect little ending, like the perfect life they always wanted to show everyone. But the comments under the post told the truth. People asked questions like, what happened? Is everything okay? Did the renovation fail? I heard rumors about money problems. The shiny, perfect life was cracking. The mask was falling off. Meanwhile, my parents stopped going to the fancy social events they used to attend. No more brunches with friends from church. No more holiday parties with everyone wearing matching outfits. No more big smiles for the camera. Instead, they quietly moved to a smaller rental home across town. They weren't ruined. They weren't poor. They were just living within reality for the first time. They had to finally face the rules of the world, the ones they had tried to bend for so long. Chloe texted me one day. She said, they are different now. Just quiet. Your dad barely talks. Your mom doesn't talk about the store anymore. I asked, are they angry? Chloe said, I think they're scared. Maybe ashamed. Maybe both. I closed my eyes and let that sink in. No apology was coming. No admitting they did anything wrong. No saying they hurt anyone. And that's when I finally understood something very important. They didn't fail as parents by accident. They failed because they believed they could never be wrong. They thought they were always right even when they weren't. They thought the world should bend around them. But now I could see it clearly. I was done carrying the weight of their mistakes. One evening when winter was settling over Austin, I walked alone along the river. The air was cold and crisp and it smelled like water and wet leaves. The city lights shone on the river, twinkling like tiny stars. For the first time in a long time my chest felt calm. I felt free. Not because I had won. Not because my parents' lives were falling apart. Not because the money problem was solved. But because I finally understood something I had ignored for years. Healing doesn't come from hurting the people who hurt you. Healing comes from choosing yourself after they don't. My family's collapse wasn't my victory. My clarity was. They taught me to be quiet and I learned to speak. They taught me to shrink and I learned to stand tall. They taught me love had to be earned and I learned love doesn't have to be earned. Walking along the river, I whispered to the cold air, you tried to define me. You tried to limit me. But you never knew me. The wind carried my words away, but the truth stayed with me. The story my parents wrote about me ended. Now I am starting my own story. Winter slowly covered Austin. The city felt soft with cool air and early sunsets. My life became quiet in a way I never knew. No more trying to make my parents happy. No more second-guessing everything I did. Work went well. My teams were happy and successful. My days were clear and calm. But the best part wasn't the success. It was quiet. A quiet that didn't hurt anymore. A quiet that made me feel strong. Some nights, I would stand on my balcony with a cup of tea and watch the cars move like a glowing river below. And I would wonder, did my parents ever think about me? About what they said? About the fake signature? About the story they told? Maybe yes, maybe no. But their story wasn't my job anymore. A month later, I got a message from Amaris. She said, "Just checking on you. Heard your parents are adjusting." I answered, "Adjusting?" She said, "Yeah. Your dad works part-time at a hardware store. Your mom helps at the community center. They are quieter now, softer." I thought about that. I wasn't angry. I wasn't happy. I was just thinking. I said, "Are they okay?" Amaris said, "They are surviving. But they aren't the same people." I said, "Maybe that's good. For them. Or for me." I smiled a little. Both. Growth doesn't always look like success. Sometimes it looks like illusions breaking. My parents spent their lives making a perfect story. But losing the store, losing the building, moving to a smaller home didn't destroy them. It made them humble. And humility, even late, is a start. But I wasn't waiting for them to change. I wasn't waiting for a family reunion I didn't need. I wasn't trying to forgive them. I didn't need closure from them. I needed it for me. I poured myself into what mattered. I grew one of my businesses into a training program for young girls in tech. Girls like me when I was 14, learning coding secretly, hoping someone would see their spark even if their family didn't. I took weekends off, something I never did before. I visited places I had always wanted to go. A cabin in Colorado, a quiet lake outside Dallas, the art museum downtown. I surrounded myself with people who were honest, kind, and true. People who didn't need me to be small so they could shine. My life wasn't perfect. But it was mine. One night I sat at my desk writing a plan for a new AI tool. I looked around my apartment. The plants I kept alive, the paintings I collected from local artists, the notes on my wall with messy ideas. And I realized, this is my home. Not the one I ran from. Not the one that rejected me. The one I built and chose. My parents once told people I was homeless. And in some ways I was. But not the way they meant. I was homeless inside their expectations. Homeless inside a family that didn't make space for me. Homeless in a story where I could only be small. Now I had a home with walls I built myself. A door I could close. A space where I didn't have to prove anything. I whispered quietly, "I'm home now." Months went by and I didn't see my parents. Maybe I will one day. Maybe we will talk. Maybe we won't. Either way, I'm not waiting. Because the opposite of rejection isn't acceptance. It's freedom. Freedom to be yourself without saying sorry. Freedom to leave behind stories written by people who didn't know your truth. Freedom to walk away and never look back. Not angry. Just peaceful. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, my parents told me to go live on the streets. 3 months later, I was standing in a home filled with laughter, dreams, and quiet happiness. The kind of happiness you only get when you choose yourself. And for the first time, I wasn't asking for permission. I was choosing peace.